Good morning and welcome to this formal meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Rob Kendrick and I'm the chairman of the committee. Welcome to all members and officers present today, and in particular I would welcome, I hope he will be joining us shortly, Councillor Ashley Baxter, who has replaced Councillor Cleaver, and two students who are observing our meeting today as part of their work experience in democratic services this week. So welcome to you as well. And welcome, Councillor Baxter. No, that's okay. I've just welcomed you in your absence, actually. Welcome to the committee. The video feed of this meeting is being broadcast via the County Council's website, and I'd also like to welcome the members of the press and public who are watching our meeting online today. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I would like to remind you that your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. Welcome also to the following senior officers from Children's Services: Heather Sandy, Executive Director, Children's Services; Linda Dennett, Assistant Director, Children's Health and Commissioning; Sarah Nadone, Assistant Director, Sector-Led Improvement; and Martin Smith, Assistant Director, Children's Education. We are expecting Councillor Mrs Bradwell, OBE, Executive Councillor for Children's Services, Community Safety, Procurement and Migration, to attend this meeting, and she should be arriving shortly. I'd like to begin with the usual safety announcement. There's no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park. We then need to wait in the car park until further instructions. Please can I also remind everyone to ensure their mobiles and devices are on silent. Also, when invited to speak, can you please ensure you switch your microphone on? Otherwise, those attending the meeting via Teams and members of the press and public listening to our meeting online won't be able to hear you. Please be aware that you need to speak directly into the microphones to be heard. And if you wish to speak during the meeting, can you please raise your hand and my Vice Chairman, Councillor William Gray, will make a note. So that's the introduction part. Let's move on to the business on today's agenda. Item 1, apologies for absent and replacement members. Jess, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. So we've received apologies from Councillor Wright, Councillor Rowe, Dr Emile van der Zee, the Parent Governor Representative, Mr Martin Kyle, the Church Rep, and Joe Kavanagh, the Assistant Director for Early Help.
Thanks very much. We'll move on to item 2 on our agenda today, which is declarations of members' interests. Members of the committee are reminded they need only declare any relevant interests which have not been declared on their declaration of pecuniary interest form. Do any members wish to declare an interest? No. Fine. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 3, minutes of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 16th of June 2023. This is to confirm and sign the minutes from the meeting of the committee held on the 16th of June this year as a correct record. Do I have a proposer and seconder? Councillor Whittington and Councillor Smith. We will now vote on the minutes. You are voting on whether you agree that the meeting minutes are a correct record. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Abstentions? Thank you, that's the minutes agreed. We now move on to item 4, which is announcements by Chairman, Executive Councillors and Chief Officers. Firstly, my announcements. I'm pleased to report that following a recent election for a new Parent Governor Representative, Dr Emile van der Zee has been elected. Dr van der Zee has previously been a Parent Governor Representative on this committee and the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, and I look forward to welcoming him back at our next meeting in September. On the 14th of July, I attended the Lincolnshire Education Excellence Awards in Lincoln, which was a celebration event to recognise and honour the exceptional commitment and talent within Lincolnshire's education sector. It was a very enjoyable evening with 11 awards handed out to educators and educational organisations, including to the Young People's Learning Provision, a County Council commissioned programme to support young people with special education needs and disabilities, or who are unemployed, to progress into the world of work, and that won the community involvement category. As Councillor Mrs Bradwell is not with us, we have to skip Executive Councillor announcements at this stage. No doubt she may come in with something later on. Chief Officer announcements. Are there any Chief Officer announcements, Heather Sandy?
None from me, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 5, the Ofsted inspection of Lincolnshire's Children's Services Outcome Report. This item can be found on pages 11 to 28 of the agenda pack. Sets out the findings and judgments from the recent Ofsted inspection of children's services. Just to remind members, the actions required of us as a committee are to review the findings and judgments from the inspection report and agree the next steps in respect of areas for improvement contained within the inspection report. I'd like to invite Heather Sandy, Executive Director for Children's Services, to present the report and provide a presentation. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So absolutely delighted to present the report to you. As you know, this committee is a big part of the work we do, and we bring all our decisions through here for scrutiny. So it's really pleasing to be able to share this report with you and to reflect on some of the findings of the Ofsted inspection. Thanks, Jess. So the inspectors visited us in April, and overall the council was judged as outstanding. I think there are 11 authorities in the country, so that's out of 150 that have retained outstanding, so that's a really strong place for us to be. It's reached across 4 individual judgments, so the impact of leaders on social work practice was outstanding, the experience and progress of children who need help and protection was outstanding, the experience and progress of children in care was outstanding, and then a new judgment this time into care leavers. I think we were the second authority in the country to have a judgment on care leavers, and that was good. So thanks, Jess. Just to go into that in a little bit more detail then, in terms of the leadership, and that involves the political leadership as well as the professional leadership, they were really clear that we focused on the right areas for development since 2019, and obviously in that time we're all well aware we've had both a pandemic and a cost of living crisis, so it's been a really challenging time for anybody delivering services to communities. Really clear again through the inspectors that we are well supported by strong corporate and political commitment that ensures that children's services is a priority of the council. And we've talked often here about the investment we've got in children's services and the support we've had for the services when we know other colleagues have struggled to get that support. So it's something that, you know, we continue to be really proud of and grateful for. Leaders have successfully responded to the challenges of COVID-19 and have contributed to placement sufficiency and financial, both financially and strategically. And that's the work we brought through around opening more children's homes, about making sure we are as little reliant on the external market as we can be, although we know that market is still one that has a big influence on our finances. Lincolnshire continues to play an influential role both as a sector-led improvement partner and also through the Family Hubs programme, so we're still leading work nationally for children's services. The other reflection we're really pleased with is the reflection on our partnership, so the work we do with schools, with police and with health, and the inspectors found that the strength internally is mirrored by the strength of our multi-agency working. Thanks, Jess. So in terms of children in need of help and protection, again, you'll see throughout the report they reflect strongly on our early help offer and on the relationships our early help practitioners build with children so that we can de-escalate need and avoid the need to come into statutory services. Once that is required and children are allocated a social worker, the report highlights that those social workers visit in a timely way, the meetings are held regularly and are well attended by our partners. The report talks about the strong coordinated partnership to children at risk of child criminal exploitation, and that when children 16 or 17 present to the local authority as homeless, they are appropriately assessed. That's all the work we've developed through our Future for Me, which obviously we've received various reports here on that over the last few years. Also, the public law outline processes are strong and effective and support a number of families to access the process safely. That's when we're considering bringing children into care, and we need to plan for that, but where we want to work with families to de-escalate need. Thanks, Jess. In terms of the experiences and progress of children in care, the reflection was that they receive an outstanding service that results in their life experiences significantly improving. So we're committed to working with families as well, where that is safe to do so, but once children come into care, they receive good support, good educational support, and social workers know them well and talk about them with pride, that the social workers spend time with children to ensure their views and wishes help to inform their care plans. Most children live in high-quality foster placements within Lincolnshire, where they're happy and settled and their foster carers receive excellent support. Thanks, Jess. So the experience of care leavers, this was the new one. They said most care leavers were well supported by their leaving care workers who make positive efforts to build trusting relationships with them. That there's a full range of specialist services and advice to assist those young people with their emotional and mental health needs. Young people in higher education say they're well supported by the virtual school to be successful, and a wide range of placement options have been commissioned so that most young people live in housing that meets their need. Thanks, Jess. I think you know us well. We're not an authority that it stays where they are. We like to be moving forward. We like to be forward thinking, and there are certainly things in this report that we will want to work on and improve over the next period of time. So the two areas that Ofsted highlight were the quality and consistency of planning and case records for care leavers and the offer to care experienced children over 21. So we're taking immediate steps to improve the quality of those services by looking at the casework. We've got training planned and we've got new audit activity in place. We intend to bring the audit more in line with the internal council processes. As you'll know, Care Leavers is a commission service which is delivered by our partners Bernardo's. So we are working with Bernardo's to undertake a service review. The current contract comes to an end in 2024 and we want to work with Bernardo's to ensure that we get the correct level of service in place as we go forward. Thanks, Jess. So, in summary, Lincolnshire continues to provide outstanding services for vulnerable children and families. There is a good level of service that families can access. Outstanding social work practice is still in place and means that children are well managed within their families and their communities. Our staff, our schools and other adults involved in children's lives work to ensure that they provide help quickly when it's needed before issues escalate. And we've successfully focused on the areas of development that were recognised at the last inspection. It's really clear there that we recognise there's more work to do on our care leaver offer in order to bring them to that outstanding standard as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Heather, for a very comprehensive summary, and indeed it's a very welcome report for us to see. Councillor Gray, do we have any speakers?
Councillor Whittington.
Councillor Whittington.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Heather, I think please accept my congratulations to the service on an excellent report. I think this does tremendous credit, in terms of not only yourself, the rest of the senior team, but also all of the staff, who work in children's services. So delighted to receive this report. Obviously, to receive outstanding in 3 of the 4 categories is really, really good. Obviously, a new category this time, and those 2 sort of, it still, comes out with a rating of good, which is good. But obviously, what needs to improve, and as you said in your presentation, you're really putting steps in place to deal with this. I'm just wondering if you could just give us some indication of the sort of time frame you're working towards, and if you'll be reporting back on progress to this committee in the future. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington. In terms of time frames, there's some work we've started immediately which will have an impact. The improvement plan is coming to the Directorate Leadership team next week for sign-off, so that we're really clear, and that's going to have milestones within it. I'm very happy to bring that here and to have that monitored through the committee. That's something we would welcome, that additional scrutiny and challenge. And I know Bernardo's would also welcome coming and talking about what it is they're doing to build the service from a good service to an outstanding service.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whittington, for that suggestion, which has been taken on board. Councillor Mrs. Kelly, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Heather, for your report. And could I too reiterate that it's, congratulations, because as my fellow councillor has just said, to get 3 out of 4 outstandings is excellent. What I wanted to ask, and maybe this is too soon, is when you're talking about working with Bernardo's, and obviously it's really good if you could keep us up to date how that work is going. What sort of things are you... Really what I wanted was a little bit more detail about what your work with Bernardo's may entail, so that we've got in our minds what you're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So a lot of the work will entail really looking at the quality assurance processes. So because they're a commission service, they have their own quality assurance processes, and within the council, we reviewed all of our quality assurance processes over the last 18 months, and we've made some developments there. Our intention was always to roll that out into care leavers and support them to mirror those quality assurance functions within their own service. So that's something that we will be focused on. What that will do is drive that continuous improvement cycle, because by doing really robust quality assurance, we get into the areas that we want to improve. There were some other areas that around the case notes and around how we record things that we need to think about. And then there were some reflections on the over 21 service. And those of you who are on corporate parenting panel will know that the service was extended from up to 21 to 25, and the idea being between 21 and 25, it's advice and guidance. Ofsted's interpretation of that is slightly different to ours, and because we're only the second authority to be inspected, we weren't really aware of that. So they were expecting to see an allocated caseworker to every care leaver, and we need some time to reflect on that and reflect on, because many of our care leavers are living very independent lives and don't particularly want a caseworker, but we need to make sure we're getting it right, and where they do want a caseworker, they've got access to those services. So that's part of that service review, to ensure we've got the level of detail right. We're really keen to engage with care leavers on that. We're not an authority that will just implement what Ofsted thinks is best. We need to engage with the young adults themselves and say, what is it you want this service to look like, and how can we shape it? And again, some of that would have happened naturally as the contract comes up for renewal, and the contract will be coming through the process through here.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gray. Do we have any further questions?
No further questions, but I'd like to ask one if I may.
Yep, by all means.
Thank you. Firstly, Heather, congratulations from your team. Clearly an outstanding result, and we all know the fabulous work that happens here in this council, so very, very well done. But of course, I know you always want to improve, and there's always things we can improve on. And I noticed that in the report, it mentions several times about the lack of clear timescales. I think firstly on pages 17 to 18, there's detail there with relation to pathway plans for care leaders, and also on page 24 about achieving their goals. And I'm just wondering, what have you got in place to try and improve those timescales?
Thank you, Councillor Gray. So there's two separate issues you're picking up on there. So the care leavers one around the recording, and those elements will be picked up through the improvement plan. The timescales with relation to the services within the council were a reflection by Ofsted that when we said we would do something in our meeting notes, we didn't say what day we would do it on. We very much challenged back, and they were very clear. The evidence was there that everything was followed up on, that was said would be done, was done. And we think that's a bit of a deficit model. We have quite reflective notes. Families are our partners in the work that we do. So if we say we're going to have a meeting, we might not put we're going to do that the next day, but Ofsted were clear it was done the next day, but perhaps we should write that it would be done the next day. So again, it's one that we need to reflect on around whether that's something that we want to change in our recording, because we do know families like the recording as it currently is, and it works well for staff. So that's an element for us to consider further. In terms of the care leavers and the timescales, that's something that we will be following up on through the improvement plan.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. That's very useful. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions?
No further indication, no.
I have had a couple of written questions from Dr. Van der Zee. Now, they're actually very on technical issues to do with presentation of data and so on. And he does start by saying he congratulates everyone on the outstanding inspection success. But his questions are very, very technical. And I think rather than try and read them out in the meeting, I'll ask that officers respond to those questions in detail to Dr. Van der Zee. I hope that meets with approval. Heather?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Whittington.
Chairman, would it be possible if those detailed questions and the replies are included in the minutes of the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you for that. Yes, we'll make sure that that happens. Thank you. If we have no further questions, then I wish to propose that the committee has reviewed the findings and judgments from the inspection report, and we record our congratulations to Children's Services for an overall judgment of outstanding, and that we receive a progress report update in 6 months' time on the 2 areas for improvement contained within the inspection report. And with your agreement, I feel I should write to the staff and congratulate them on behalf of the committee. That's with your approval. The nods indicate that. Thank you. So can I ask if you'd raise your hands if you agree with that proposal? Thanks very much. That is agreed. Thank you. We now move on to item 6 on the agenda today, and this is service level performance against the Corporate Performance Framework 2022 to 23 quarter 4. This item, which can be found on pages 29 to 44 of your agenda pack, sets out the quarter 4 performance for the service level performance measures in relation to children's services. And just to recap on the actions required of us, we're required to firstly review and comment on the children and young people service level performance for 22-23 quarter 4, and secondly to review and agree the 2023-24 performance indicators for children and young people as shown in Appendix A. And I'd like to invite Martin Smith, Assistant Director for Children's Education, and Sarah Nardone, Assistant Director for Sector-Led Improvement, to present the report. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to present to you a summary of the quarter 4 performance reporting, which covers a number of different areas. Obviously, this is reporting on quarter 4, which is a period that runs from January to March. Within the report, there are 3 measures that have exceeded their target, 3 measures that achieved their target, and 4 measures did not meet their target. Each of the targets have a narrative and a summary around them to support the understanding, but I'll just go through and give a flavour of each of those. So the first one within the children are healthy and safe corporate plan area is around juvenile first-time offending. That is above target with an actual of 108 and a target of 125. We've seen a reduction in quarter 4 to 108 from quarter 3, so there is a real trajectory of positive success of our joint diversionary panel. Moving on, children in care per 10,000 is above target at 49.1 and the target being 51.9. This has been revised as a target through the previous few months due to the changing landscape in which the data is being set and the impact of the National Transfer Scheme. So that has been built into the future targets. There's some further detail in the narrative that talks around the reasoning behind that adjustment, but just to draw your attention that children in care per 10,000 remains significantly below the most recently published national figures. In terms of children who are subject to a child protection plan, that is on track in terms of the range set within the target. We've got 390 against a target of 370. Just to assure the board here that that is a positive outcome, because we know that our plans and our child protection processes are recognised at managing risk and supporting children at lower levels of support rather than needing to come into that statutory level of support within the system. Average time to match a child to an adoptive family. Performance has been better during this quarter, and that is again because of the work that family finding activities produced and the ability to provide placement orders, and wherever possible utilising placements that have been identified in a timely and effective way. In terms of a measure that didn't achieve its target, this was around the average time taken to move a child from care to an adoptive family. You'll be aware as a committee that there was a significant impact of the pandemic on proceedings and court delays. That has continued. It is being addressed, but there is still a legacy of impact around that piece of work, and also that the calculation around the target setting has changed as more of the pandemic period has been incorporated into the statistics. Juvenile reoffending has also not met its target, and that's a trade-off issue really around success in one area means there's more of a focus on activity and behaviours by a small group of individuals who then, if reoffend, have a significant impact on the data set. And then you can see in the narrative here, particularly, this is a small cohort number, which in turn reflects repeat offences by a small individual. Okay, moving on to learn and achieve. The permanent exclusions data is above target. I will just highlight, although this is for Q4 January to March, it is actually 2021 data because of the delay in national data being reported. So the graphs reflect 2021 data, which clearly is significantly in the past, but we're limited by the availability of data. But it does show at that time a continued trajectory of being below our target in terms of permanent exclusions from schools, but it must be noted that this was also during the time of lockdowns and school closures, so therefore it's unlikely a permanent exclusion would take place when children aren't attending. Moving on, in terms of achievement gap between pupils eligible for free school meals and their non-free school meal counterparts. This target hasn't been met, and I think the committee is well versed and aware of the impact of the pandemic and school experiences, and also the complexities around examinations and teacher assessments at the end of Key Stage 4, although it is worth noting that the gap for those children in Lincolnshire has closed by 1.5 percentage points. For some level of reassurance, the Education Strategic 1 plan is making good progress, and we'll be reporting on that in the autumn term around some more of the detail and the impact of some of those strategies have had with our young people in the 2023 examination window. In terms of care leavers in suitable accommodation, we are on track. With that, there is a definition of what suitable accommodation is, and we can see that young people are making informed choices as adults. That can mean that they're in a suitable accommodation, but can also mean that there are a small number of young people who are not in suitable accommodation. However, they are happy with the arrangements and are in agreement with them. Our corporate parenting manager continues to monitor this monthly in terms of unsuitable accommodation, and we will keep monitoring that moving forward as that position potentially changes. In terms of 16 to 17-year-old children in care participating in learning, this is below the target of 90%. It's running at 83.2, but it has seen an 8% improvement on the previous quarter as our virtual school has been coordinating personal support plans for our 16 and 17-year-olds to make sure that these children are supported into sustainable educational engagement moving forward, supported by the post-16 pupil premium funding. So those are the targets, and what I would suggest to the committee is in reference to Appendix A, you'll see the similar well-known target areas that we've just summarised, with any suggested amendments, changes in terms of target setting. These targets are reviewed each year by the service areas to consider national data sets, patterns and trends, as well as service performance and issues, and a range set from that. So hopefully that will be useful for the committee to review. So at that point, I will pause and hand over to the chair and the committee to ask any questions.
Thanks very much, Martin. Sarah, did you wish to add anything at this stage?
No, thank you.
That's okay. Councillor Gray, do we have any questions?
Nobody indicating, Mr. Chairman.
Right, okay.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter.
Councillor Baxter.
Sorry, my fault, I didn't indicate. And please forgive my ignorance and naivety on this subject. Looking at the figures, I'm trying to work out what I'm being told. It looks like some good news and some challenges. What are you most worried about?
I think as an AD for education, I think for me one of the priorities is around free school meal attainment and that group of children, but that's because of my education discipline. I think as a broader council, I think we would be certainly wanting to make sure that we reduce the amount of time children are waiting to complete within their care arrangements. I don't know, Heather, Sarah, if there was anything particularly in this quarter set whether you would want to highlight.
What I would highlight in terms of so the rise in exclusions that we've seen in this one is continued. So the reporting's very delayed, but we do know it is continued, and we do know that that's putting pressure on our alternative provision in our special school estate. So that is an area that that we are particularly working really hard on at the moment.
Councillor Baxter, you wish to come back?
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back. With the free school meal attainment process, how much are we able to influence the academies? The academies are doing most of the educating, I guess. Do we have any? What interventions do we have available to us to influence that figure?
Yeah, really good question, Councillor Baxter. Thank you. So you're absolutely right. 72% of children are educated in the academy system, although only 52% of schools are academies. So you're right in that point of working together. As an education team and the Education Strategic One Plan, we want to champion outcomes for all children. And so irrelevant of the structure, what we spend a lot of time doing is working with our partners to bring really a coherent offer to all schools, and then target schools and then particularly make sure that they're aware of the offer and engage in that offer. The vast majority of offers are funded through the DFE, through our Teaching School Hub or the Maths Hub or other curriculum hubs, and so communicating the offers that are available to them is really important. So for example, early years communication activity, we would talk to schools that their data set would particularly suggest they need to participate in that programme. At Key Stage 4, we make sure that they're aware of the MPQs, the National Professional Qualifications, that the DFE invest in to improve outcomes in those settings. And we communicate that through our leadership briefings. As Heather mentioned, I think in the Ofsted feedback, one of the things that we are really proud of is our relationship with all schools in the county, academy or maintained, and the ability to be able to communicate with them at leadership briefings and through my MAT CEO meetings means that we can particularly highlight that activity and appropriate programmes for them to engage. Overall, just as a level of reassurance, 89% of schools in Lincolnshire engage in that offer of teaching school and curriculum hub activity, which is really high. That's about 32% above the national average for levels of engagement, which demonstrates the awareness, the ability to bring that activity together and prioritise it for our schools and for them to engage in it. The Education One Plan particularly focuses on what are our county priorities. That's been revised at the moment as well, and will include this element around free school meal attainment and bring that forward into next year's offer of school improvement activity as well. So hopefully that gives you some kind of reassurance around the activity that we're doing, but those numbers are really good in terms of engagement.
Thank you very much for that answer. Heather, you wish to come in?
Thank you. The other thing, Councillor Baxter, and sorry that I've got my back to you, it's balancing the microphone with manners. So the other thing that I think is really important is the work we do with the Regional Schools Commissioner. So the Regional Schools Commissioning team published a document last week about how they're going to commission academies and how they're going to grow trusts, and what we need to do is make sure we have strong trusts in Lincolnshire, so that we know now schools can't convert to being an academy on their own. They can only join into a trust or form a trust. And we need to be really clear about what our definition of a strong trust is, which is a balance of having those strong academic outcomes, but also being inclusive and supporting children to stay in mainstream education, so that we can maximise life chances for all. So really, the work we do with the Regional Schools Commissioner is really important, and the work we do nationally to drive good practice around this is important.
Thanks very much. Do we have any further questions?
Yes, Councillor Whittington next.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of questions. First one is around average time taken to move a child from care to an adoptive family, and obviously, you know, in the presentation, and we're aware of the the backlog in the court system as a result of COVID. But I'm looking at the way you measure it and the rolling 3-year average, and as the narrative says, there's a certain skewing taking place there because of that, because it's going to include the time period that was covered by lockdown. But I'm just wondering what story the more recent data of the last 12 months is telling you. So it's just perhaps teasing that out, because that might be a better indication of direction of travel in terms of getting that down. Because obviously, as somebody who's been through the process of adopting a child, obviously, 500 days doesn't sound a lot to us, but to a young child, that's a good chunk of their life so far. And the second one is on the juvenile reoffending. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, as Martin mentioned in the presentation, the Joint Diversity Panel is doing great work in stopping first offending. But as Martin said, there's then a smaller, maybe hardcore of repeat offenders that are again skewing the figures. I'm just wondering what work we can do with those sort of repeat offenders to stop them from repeat offending. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Heather, you wish to respond?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So the court issue is definitely getting better. So we're working really well in terms of the adoption and the backlog. And you're absolutely right. The 3-year rolling programme means as we move forward, we're removing some of that COVID delay. I think you're right, it is a long time. Very often these children are with the people who they're going to be living with, and it's about, which you'll know, it's about the formality of finishing this process, which is very important. But definitely we expect to see that increase as we move forward. And also at times we would say it's right that there is that delay if we need to work with families a little bit longer, if we need to do other things. And I know that we've outlined kind of some of the exceptional cases there where, that was the right thing for that young person to do. It's a really important decision, isn't it? And we need to make sure we've taken the time to get that right. But more recently, court time is improving, and we're expecting to see that improve. In terms of the work that we're doing with the smaller group of young people who are in the youth justice system, we do an extensive amount of work with that group. We've had HMIP in, they've done an inspection in February of the work we do in that area, and that too was judged outstanding. They do some fantastic work with them. It's really difficult. Some of these young people, we need to work really hard to ensure that we disrupt those who would seek to criminalise them and support them to be able to move away from that activity. But it's a very small number of young people in Lincolnshire. We don't tend to have some of the the issues that some people in the larger urban areas are facing, but we do have some of that, and we need to continue to work on that. But we work really closely with our police colleagues so that we disrupt the criminal activity as well as supporting the young people and their families, because sometimes the families can be well aware of what's happening and are really struggling to get their young person to move away from that. So it's working with those families.
Yes, by all means, come back, Councillor Whittington.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. How much of that repeat offending is tied up with county lines? Thanks.
I would have to look at that for you, Councillor Whittington, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Mrs Kelly, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your report, Martin. This might sound a really silly question. Obviously, you have got lots of strategies in place trying to address the gap achievement between, you know, the children on free school meals and the children that aren't. And you outlined, you know, a really comprehensive number of strategies in relation to working with schools, etc. Life chances is a massive area, isn't it, which as a society we're concerned about. My concern is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I just wonder, when the schools have got, you know, various strategies in place to try and have catch-up sessions, etc., whether motivation of children, which comes into this. So do you know the take-up? Do the schools give you any indication of take-up of children to the catch-up sessions? Do you see what I'm getting at here? I'm not explaining myself very well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. I think there are a couple of parts to that question, a number of interventions post-pandemic. Where schools have a number of things. So there's the free school meal attainment and achievement work that schools have been doing for a number of years through the use of pupil premium. More recently, post-pandemic, there's been funding allocated around catch-up funding for tuition, etc. Most schools, I haven't got hard data because they don't have to report it through to us, but most schools in Lincolnshire have put some kind of either catch-up or recovery provision on, whether that's individual or group tuition in reading, or particularly in a lot of schools writing, because writing was a particular area of impact due to lockdowns, etc. So most schools do. Schools are very keen and championing outcomes for children in this area, particularly through good use of pupil premium, and that pupil premium is also reported on school websites, so there's a level of accountability there, and it's also checked through Ofsted inspections. So schools are certainly putting on the offers to support children. Children are engaging as much as they possibly can within the provision that's available within the school. And you know, we've seen some of the impact of that with the 1.5% narrowing of the gap for FSM children. And we would hope moving forward that would continue. It is also worth noting, and I didn't mention it, that FSM group, if you recall, grew exponentially during the pandemic. So I think originally it was something like 17,000 eligible for free school meals, and then it went to 23,000 because of the impact of lockdown. So when we're comparing the data, we've also got to be mindful we're comparing it to if you like, a different cohort, an expanded cohort.
Thanks very much. Councillor Gray, do you have any further questions?
No further questions.
Thanks. If I could just ask one question, and it's actually going back to the juvenile reoffending issue. In relation to the replacement measure for juvenile reoffending from the new suite of KPIs that the Youth Justice Board have requested the Council collects, what will these KPIs be measuring, and has a replacement one been identified yet?
So in terms of the new KPIs, they have been identified, and we're currently working through them to establish what they are and how they'll report, and there'll be a series of governance arrangements that they will go through to ensure that the reporting is accurate and timely, and how they'll sit against the corporate plan and the service plans, and then obviously reported in here.
Thanks very much for that. If we have no further questions or comments from members, I propose that the committee is satisfied with the children and young people service level performance for 22-23 Q4, and that we agree the 2023-24 performance indicators for children and young people as shown in Appendix A. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? I think that is agreed. Thank you for that. At this stage, Councillor Mrs Bowell has joined us, and I just wonder if there's any comments you wish to make from your position.
No, Mr Chairman, not necessarily. Sorry, I've been to the dentist this morning, so...
Oh dear.
Get old. I know, you get old, don't you, and have to go more regularly, so sorry.
I hope it's gone well. Right, we move on to item 7 on the agenda, Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item sets out the committee's work programme for 2023-24, and the report can be found on pages 45 to 52 of the agenda pack. And again, to summarise, the actions required of us are to review and agree the committee's work programme as set out in the report, and to highlight for discussion any additional scrutiny activity which could be considered for inclusion in the work programme. So I'd like to hand over to Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, to present the report. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one amendment to the work programme to report. An exempt report on education provision planning has been added to the agenda for 20th October. And this is for pre-decision scrutiny prior to decision by Councillor Mrs Bradwell between the 23rd and the 27th of October. Otherwise, in relation to the future work programme, the next meeting is on the 8th of September. The committee will be receiving 4 pre-decision reports. These are in relation to the Maples short breaks provision recommissioning of the portage service, and then 2 exempt reports on the new Lincolnshire secure children's home build and Whole Beach William Stukely Primary School extension. And in addition, there will also be the Q1 performance report. On October, there will be a further update on the building communities of specialist provision strategy, the update on the Children in Care Transformation Programme, an update on the Youth Offending Service inspection recommendations that was requested back in April by the committee, and the annual statutory complaints report on children's services. And in addition, obviously, there will be the one I've just reported on. And December, there will then be an additional report also on the Lincolnshire Secure Unit catering service that's just been added on, the Children and Young People Mental Health Transformation Programme, which again the committee requested back in April, and the Q2 performance. And following from today for the Ofsted report, I'll speak with Heather, and we'll look at probably maybe January, March time for adding that back on, if that works in terms of the timescales. Otherwise, I welcome any other suggestions from the committee. Thank you, Chairman.
I believe Councillor Matthews, you indicated you wish to make a comment.
Thank you very much. First off, congratulations on your excellent Ofsted report. Well done. At Health Scrutiny on Wednesday, the LPFT spoke about work on transitioning between 16 and 18. But they said you're working with you. We're not aware of any work that we're doing, or I'm not aware through this committee of any work that we're doing to link transitioning. What I am aware as a patch representative is that there are issues with 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds accessing mental health through the LPFT 24-hour care system. And I'm concerned that we might be focusing on age restrictions in transition, where they start to pick people up at 17 years, 6 months, and then care them through, where actually there might be 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds going in for urgent care treatment that are fed into one system and then jumbled around in that system, however good it is, and then move back onto a different system. And I just wonder if we could have an understanding of the work that's being considered in partnership with LPFT to reduce from age-related mental health transitioning to need-related mental health support during that transition period. And can I also ask, have I made myself clear? Because I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Matthews. So the short answer is yes, of course, we can bring something here. We'll need to be clear about the decision making and the scrutiny format, because some of these are not our decisions whilst we're working and influencing. They're not, some of them are decisions that fall within the governance of the ICB, and so we just need we'll need to clarify that in the report that we bring. And we did bring a report fairly recently. Charlotte presented a report which did refer to the fact that we were doing the review of children's mental health services. So we have indicated within the committee that that's what we're doing. I think that's absolutely fine for us to be able to bring it in, and what we'll do is make clear where we're not decision makers, so we're sharing information with you, and what we're doing to influence that decision making as well.
You wish to come back, Councillor Matthews?
Yes, and it is specifically about transitioning, but it's also about the LPFT is saying that they're appointing peer support workers for young people and in that transitioning period. And there's really good intentions from all players. I just didn't see it as a joined up solution, that's all. So I'm not trying to be critical here. I'm trying to say a stitch in time now might save 9. Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's a very good question. In my past experience, the transition between the different ages has always been a perennial issue. Tracy, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. So I just mentioned we've got the Children and Young People Mental Health Transformation Programme, so we'll speak to officers so we can have it covered within that report. And yeah, no worries. We'll pick that up. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Councillor Whittington, I believe you had a point to make.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think Councillor Matthews made a very good point, because obviously we did the review in the last council on transitions, didn't we? This may be today's silly question. What's the item 2 for September? What's the portage service? What exactly is it? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Portage is the service that we provide that goes in to support families where they might have a young person preschool with a disability, and it supports them within the home and helps them look at strategies on how to manage those disabilities. Thank you.
Thanks very much for clarifying that point. Do we have any other further comments, questions from members?
Nobody indicating.
Thanks, Councillor Gray. I therefore propose that the work programme is agreed. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thanks very much. That is agreed. That concludes the business of the meeting. We've had a very brief meeting, but next time we meet, I think we'll have a bit of a longer meeting. So enjoy the short one. So thanks very much for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all in September. Thank you very much.